Hello there, welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. That's Paul Chiana, Marshall Sutcliffe. And as always, it all comes down to this. This is the finals where we have two really good players ready to go at it here. One of the best of all time, of course, in Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. But, you know, somebody who's been around the professional scene for multiple years and has kept himself at or near the highest levels. Ondřej Stráský finding himself facing down his hero. I actually saw this on social media. No, seriously, like he said, when I first met Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, I told him, you're my hero. Like, you know, you're my magic hero. And then they became friends, tested together over the course of the years. And he said he is so excited to get a chance to play for these incredible stakes here as well. Because, look, there's a lot on the line for anybody, right? This is not just a scenario you know, for these two players, but this is huge. And, you know, this is the last of this iteration of the Mythic Championships. Next year, things are going to change to the Players Tour with Mythic Championships, Mythic Invitationals, and that kind of stuff going on. And, you know, everybody wants to win the last one.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so much on the line. World Championship, MPL for next season. You know, Ondřej talking about how winning this event or making it even to the finals, this is going to change kind of his life for the next 2 to maybe even 3 years. I mean, this is a really, really big deal. You know, getting into the MPL and just being one of the top players and just kind of cementing himself, you know, and he's gotten there, and just through impressive play. And, you know, this match, I mean, it's almost a true mirror.
Yes, it is. It's very, very close. And let's take a look at our two players here. Of course, I mentioned Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa before. Look, he's simply one of the best players ever to play the game. 14 top finishes now with this top 8. Absolutely stunning resume. And yeah, Ondřej Stráský, though, this is his 4th top finish. And, you know, in a much, much shorter career, I got to say, he's really on the track here to become, you know, maybe a Hall of Famer at some point, you know, depending on how things go with the Hall of Fame. He is really established himself as an excellent and consistent player over the course of the years that he's been playing.
Yeah, he certainly has kind of that trajectory, right, as just kind of consistently being one of the best players out there. And, you know, always just kind of that joke of, oh, you know what, this was kind of a tough year for me. You know what, I think I'm going to take a step back and focus on other stuff. And every time he does, boom, you just see him at the top of the standings, kind of luring him back into kind of competitive magic. And now, I mean, he's fully committed. He's fully in. He is now in the finals, and he believes that he's in really, really good position for, you know, all the opportunities that will be presented next year for professional Magic.
Of which there are many, and they are absurd, right? Next year, if you can make it into both the MPL and qualify for the World Championship, you are set up, like you said, maybe even for multiple years, depending if you can keep winning.
Yeah. And keep in mind, the World Championships is a 16-person tournament with a prize pool of $1 million. Yeah.
I can run the numbers on that. I like anybody's chances of having a happy day if you make it into that. Just simply qualifying for it, though, extremely difficult. But, you know, this does put Ondřej Stráský on the short list. Also for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, you know, his job here as well, trying to make sure that he qualifies for that and stay in the MPL on top of it, and doing the best he can here. Getting down to the matchup, you mentioned it's not quite a full 75 card mirror, but it is very close. These lists are nearly identical. And, well, we've seen it throughout the course of the weekend, but it should be noted here that both of these players are on Simic Food. They are not playing the Sultai Food list that we saw as, you know, one of the most popular in the field. In fact, the most popular deck in the field over the course of this tournament.
Yeah, and actually the Simic Food deck had a slightly higher win percentage overall, just, you know, over the course of the tournament. And you just saw kind of how impressive some of these tempo spells can be. Aether Gust just being extremely impressive. And of course, Mass Manipulation just kind of being the superior trump card in these food matchups. Games go along, and being able to untap with Nissa, or even without Nissa, getting to 8 mana and stealing your opponent's Planeswalkers and a Hydrate Crisis. I mean, we've seen that time and time again, just kind of end games immediately. So Yeah, I mean, it's possible that Simic Food is just kind of the way to go, and maybe, you know, perhaps just the deck of the tournament. Clearly, given that both of these players are on this on the finals.
So interesting here, the fireworks are going to begin in our best 3 out of 5 match with Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa resolving, now the card of the tournament, not close, Oko, Thief of Crowns, but he also had an additional mana for a Goose, and interestingly has decided to turn his Paradise Druid into a 3/3 Elk here.
Yeah, definitely just wants to get more aggressive and have that food available. Having that food available for mana with the Gilded Goose. Also, potentially, if Paulo does draw something like a Wicked Wolf, he will have additional food available to him.
Yeah, on top of that, if Ondřej finds his own Wicked Wolf here, well, the 3/3 Elk does a little better against that than a 2/1.
Yeah, if Stráský does have a Wicked Wolf, the only target that he'd be happy going for would probably be the Gilded Goose that's in play.
Right. So let's see what Stráský has for this turn. We've likened this matchup to like a tug of war where, you know, when you pass the turn over, your opponent goes heave and kind of pulls the game in their direction. And then when you pass the turn back, they'll, you know, you get to pull it back in your direction. And then sometimes if one player gets off to the ultra quick start with Oko into Nissa, something like that, and the other player can't keep up, then the tug of war ends very quickly. But a lot of times you'll see it really be back and forth, turn by turn, over the course of the game until one player can finally mount that huge blowout. And usually, from what we've seen here, the players have ended with mass manipulation, stealing 2 or sometimes 3 things, and kind of closing the door on the game. Speaking of, Ondřej had his own copy of Oko, but it looks like he made a food with it and then passed, and Paulo's like, well, I know what this matchup's about. It's about the Planeswalker, so I'm going to make my food token that I had made last turn into an Elk and attack with both of my Elks against Oko.
Yeah, and now Stráský deciding whether or not he wants to put the Paradise Druid in front of one of the 3/3 creatures here. The downside of blocking is that he has a Nissa in hand. And if you go with the chump block, you can't run out the Nissa this turn. However, if you don't chump block, you just lose an Oko.
Really tough position there for Stráský because, as you've seen, the players will traditionally go after the mana creatures on the other side of the battlefield to try to stunt the development. And that is effectively what Paulo got to do there by threatening Oko's full loyalty on that turn.
And what we might see here, if Paulo can just kill the Oko if he just chooses to animate this other food that was just created by the Gilded Goose and attack with everything. Alternatively, he can just choose to swap the food with Stráský's 3/3 that's in play, and then also use the 2 remaining Elk to finish off the Oko.
Cards left in hand for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa are Mass Manipulation, Forest, and Ether Gust.
Yeah, and that Ether Gust is going to be big. If Stráský does try to run out, you know, a Nissa on turn 5, get the 5th land in play, he will be able to just kind of counter it before it enters the battlefield. That is a slight edge that you have for playing a card like Ether Gust over Noxious Grasp. The Planeswalker doesn't enter the battlefield, so you don't get that immediate value. But Paulo just happy creating a steady stream of 3/3 Elk, pressuring Planeswalkers, then potentially Ondřej's life total. Given that he has the Goose in play, he can just make a 3/3 every single turn. Doesn't really have to do a whole lot else either. He's going to have a 4th 3/3 in play next turn, and he's got that Ether Gust as well in hand.
So Ondřej losing Oko here, but deciding if an exchange of Elks was worth it in the process. He had no option to actually save Oko. And he ultimately decided that, yes, it is. But as you can see from a snapshot of the board, one player has more lands and 4 extra permanents. So looking pretty good for Paulo here in game number 1.
Yeah, and Ondřej is quite behind here, so he might just need to go for the Nissa, even though he's aware that Paulo can very easily have something like an Ether Gust here. if you don't cast any of your spells here, I mean, Paulo's just going to continue pumping out 3/3s, and you know, at some point, I mean, that's just going to be it, right? Ondřej needs to try to start finding some threats here, and it looks like he's going to try to find a creature here to play instead of running out the Nissa.
He did find Brazen Borrower. Could that buy him some time?
Yeah, he can use the Petty Theft on Brazen Borrower to bounce one of the tokens, which would effectively just kill a 3/3 here, especially if he targets the food token. And the Paradise Druid was already traded for earlier, so yes, 2 food tokens in place. So the Brazen Borrower, not the worst find here. Buys him some time. Still going to take 6 next turn, go down to 14.
But as you mentioned, the food factory is online here for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. He just keeps making one every turn with the Goose, then turning it into a 3/3. It is an endless stream of threats that Ondřej has to deal with, and it is starting to really pile up. So we're going to see one of them get sent away with Petty Theft, but that's still 6 damage coming in. And another land here for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, and he's just kind of got it all. He can sit here, keep generating a 3/3 every single turn while plussing his Oko. And if anything gets really out of hand, Ether Gust. And if it gets really, really out of hand, Mass Manipulation. It's hard to see how Paulo can lose from this position, just given the fact that he has multiple ways to respond to whatever it is that Ondřej Stráský does. This is interesting, actually.
Yeah, and this is one way to do it.
Is Oko, right?
Yeah, so that is the thing that Paulo is considering here. Stráský, aware of the fact that Paulo could have something like an Ether Gust, now deciding whether or not he just wants to give Paulo that Oko, or does he just want to bounce it? Because the nice thing is, I mean, if you prevent Ondřej from drawing the Oko, and you also just are totally fine with drawing an Oko of yourself. So
right.
This ends up going beautifully for Paulo.
Right. It does set him back a card here, but whatever. He still gets to make a food token and then just animate it up right away, turn it into an elk, and keep this damage flowing against Ondřej Stráský. That is 9. He's down to 5. And game 1 is just about over here. Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa dominating it from beginning to end, and that is 1 game to the good for PV.
Yeah, and that was just simply Paulo with the Planeswalker advantage there, right? That Oko was in play and didn't leave the battlefield for 5, 6, 7 turns, and every single turn he was able to just convert those resources into 3/3 tokens. Meanwhile, Ondřej is just playing catch-up, and when you're behind, part of the problem is when you're behind, you're not the one who gets a Planeswalker onto the battlefield first. You're not the one that's applying the pressure to the Planeswalker. So when he played out his Planeswalkers, they immediately were killed by the 3/3 token. So, you know, hopefully he can swing it around when he gets to be on the play in the next game.
Yeah, and that's one of those things is, of course, those type of cards, like the ones that Paulo had, can get you back from when you're behind. But you know what else they can do? They can keep you ahead. And that's exactly what he used them to do there. Game number 1 goes to Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. Now, we are playing best 3 out of 5, and that means that game number 2 is going to not consult sideboards yet, so we're going to get another game. First, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have game number 2 of the finals. Don't go anywhere.
Andrea Mengucci here, and we are going to crack a pack of Throne of Eldraine. Andrea, I've got to ask, do you have a color preference you like in this set?
I do. I like green a lot. Green-white mainly. I like to do some like tokens things. Fierce Switch Stalker. It's my top common. So let's see if I open it every time. I always hope to see it, you know?
All right, so we're laying the cards out on the table. As we go, anything kind of catching your eye already?
Scorcher's Dragonfire, definitely the best card so far. Battle of the Brawl, very powerful for the aggressive decks.
Ooh, a foil Mythic and Great Henge.
Just open a foil Mythic Rare of the colors that I like the most. So
that's an easy pick. Okay, so we're definitely taking the Great Henge.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's say that's not in there. Are you up for Vantress Gargoyle?
Yeah, I am. Vantress Gargoyle is also amazing. Blue is a good color. You don't have to necessarily need to go all in mill. Like very often you see like those like all in mill decks, but sometimes just Vantress Gargoyle makes like even like only one Merc of Secret Keeper good. You don't need to like be necessarily mono mill. So I would say like 1, 2, 3 is my pick in this draft.
So Great Henge, Vantress Gargoyle, then Scorching Dragonfire in that order?
Definitely Great Henge. Super cool. Also foil one I've never seen before. So.
Is there anything you want to keep in mind if you're drafting this? What kind of deck you want to build?
As I said, green is really about like a big creature, like Garenbrick Paladin and Fierce Witch Stalker are like the two combos that come into my mind. So those are definitely insane. With Great Henge, you just go like Fierce on turn 4, and then you just play the Henge and just tap immediately, draw cards, and etc. You just play a lot of creatures because this card requires you to have a creature. So you just play, I don't know, 20 creatures maybe, 18, 19.
Ooh, that sounds good. All right, we're going with the Great Henge here with Andrea Mangucci.
And welcome back to the feature match area here for Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Paul Cheon, and we're in the finals. We've got Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa up a game over Ondřej Stráský, but we are playing 3 out of 5 games here. And Paulo's demeanor, kind of always the same, whether he's winning or not. Same thing with Ondřej. He's a little more animated than Paulo. Paulo, when he's concentrated, is very kind of inside of himself. I am curious, though, you know, both of these players had some pretty drawn-out semifinal matches, particularly Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa going to 5 cards in the 5th game against Sebastian Pozzo and somehow finding a way through, I have to say, extremely good play by him to find the win there. Really impressive stuff. You just don't really get used to it. You know, I know he's one of the best in the world, but still watching him actually do what he does is really, really impressive.
Yeah, and to watch him kind of pull off that incredible kind of comeback, I guess. I mean, he mulliganed to 5
it's tough.
in Game 5 and had his Gilded Goose killed by Crawl Harpooner on turn 2.
Right.
And he still won that game.
Yeah, unreal. Oh.
This
Turn 1 Gilded Goose for Stráský, but he didn't have the Oko, but it could be better than that here for Ondřej. He could have the turn 3 Nissa.
Oh, that's a Nissa off the top, too.
Wow. All right, well, he actually had one in his hand, too, so now he's got 2. The question is, do you run it out here? It does actually cost you. You'd have to sacrifice the food, and looking over at Paulo's board, it just seems so likely that he could have some way to interact like an Ether Gust.
But the problem is he doesn't really have any other plays. If you just run out the Nissa here and you just kind of get Paulo to use the Ether Gust, next turn you can just try it again, right? The nature of a card like Ether Gust is it's kind of a tempo-y counterspell type card, but it doesn't permanently deal with the threat on hand. Sure, you lose the food, but next turn, I mean, Stráský has additional lands here. He simply can just play more lands and run out that Nissa again.
And I've got a secret, Paul. He doesn't have Ether Gust.
Oh.
And it resolved. So that is turn 3. Nissa who shakes the world for Ondřej Stráský. And his win percentage in this game just spiked sharply upwards. And you saw Paulo say, okay. And that is exactly the words that Stráský wanted to hear, because now it's very difficult to come back from an explosive start like this. Stage 1, though, there's Oko.
Yeah, but what's the Oko going to...
Oh, it got Ether Gusted by Stráský. It was the classic. It was the Nissa.
Is this the classic?
Animate my breeding pool, Ether Gust your play? Yeah. That's how you draw it up.
Mana creature, turn 3 Nissa, attack you, Ether Gust your turn 3 play.
The classic, baby.
The classic.
Look, that's this format in a nutshell, right? Get ahead as fast as you can and try to make it so that your opponent realistically can't come back. And looking at this game, that's exactly what Ondřej's done.
This is an attack for 8. And Paulo has nothing in play.
Just nothing.
Likely going to just run out a Wicked Wolf here potentially too, just to have additional threats. He also just has that second Nissa in play. He might just get extremely aggressive here and just run out the other Nissa.
Oh, that's
interesting. Just keep putting pressure.
That's exactly what he's going to do here, Paul. This is Ondřej Stráský recognizing that this is his moment to flood the board as quickly as possible and put this game away,
Oh
and that's exactly
goodness.
what he just did. Paulo just conceded. He had a little grimace on his face. He's like, well, I don't think I'm beating that one.
Happens. That happens. You know, when you have games like that, you just kind of chalk that one up to, you know, yeah, I mean, I'm sure Paulo had some of those draws over the course of this tournament too, right? That is what this deck is capable of. These are some of the ideal draws that you can have with this deck. But wow, that was impressive.
Wow, super quick game 2 there from Ondřej Stráský, and really critical for him there to recognize how this matchup works and what he needed to do. You know, we've seen him play very carefully over the course of this top 8, playing around stuff, not going all in, but when he saw the green light, he's like, sure, let's just play it all, and it worked out beautifully for him.
Yeah, and there are just situations where, depending on the complexion of your hand, you just have to either go for it or not, right? Sometimes you're given the luxury of playing around it. Let's say you had a Hydrate Crisis in hand. He goes, you know what? I'm going to run out of Hydrate Crisis. But in this situation, it's like, look, I have 2 Nistas in my hand.
Yep.
I'm going to cast them, hope they resolve, and yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and well, we saw what happened.
We did.
So they split the first 2 games, but now the players are going to consult their sideboards. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to get right back down into the feature match area, and we'll see how the players decided to combat each other's very similar lists. Don't go anywhere.
So the thing when you're playing a mirror match, you need to identify what's important in the matchup. Like, practice obviously helps, but it's about not only like the micro interactions where, you know, the tactical scenarios, but also strategic things. Like, is this a matchup that, you know, you're planning to go long in, that it's about resources, or is it about tempo? And when you understand that, you'll be in a much better position to manage things. I think realizing also you're just playing Magic, even if, you know, obviously your opponent has great taste just like you. They're playing the same deck, and obviously, you know, you don't want to be playing against the same deck. You think it's the best deck for a reason. That's why you're playing it, but it's bound to happen. And, you know, having a plan, having kind of one way that you know you're going to approach it, that's your plan, and you can hopefully find an edge there somehow.
Acknowledge differences for play and draw. Many people don't do that, and then there's an edge to be gained here.
Navigating an Oko mirror match is quite simple. Mulligan absolutely aggressively. Win your die roll, can't emphasize that enough, and try and get luckier than your opponent.
Well, to try to play the mirror like all the times that you need to learn the patterns and how to cyber. It's like it's one of the hardest match to play sometimes, depending on the deck, of course.
My advice from a constructed mirror match perspective is really to, I mean, it's kind of a benefit that you have, that you can kind of have this shortcut into thinking through what does it feel like from the other side of the table. You have to kind of introspect a lot of times against a different matchup and not understand what they really care about, what matters. In the mirror match, you know what matters, you know what you care about. So think about denying the opponent those things that you find most precious when you're playing that deck, that sort of thing. So in some ways, it's actually can be a little bit easier. It's a little bit daunting at first. You think, oh, well, I'm going to have no one to blame but myself if I lose because it's a mirror match. On the other hand, I think you've got some natural location for some insight, given that you know how this deck operates, you know what the important moving pieces are, and you should know how to attack that strategy.
No, in general, I like enjoying new formats, new spaces, new stuff, and well, that's Pioneer is like landed in a very sweet spot where there is not a lot of stuff that's very strong, like that's traditionally broken in Magic, like ritual effects and, you know, like free spells, etc. That's not really all that present in the format. So these types of things typically invalidate a lot of cards that are more suited for games that are going to go like a little bit more mid-rangey. So it seems like by its nature the format is both bigger than standard, and there's like a lot of the cards are going to be viable because there's no well, essentially no stack-based combo that polishes a lot of mid-range cards in formats like Modern or Legacy. So it's really interesting to see for me how it's going to develop, and it's really cool. I like playing it, and it's fun.
My thoughts on Pioneer is that playing Saheeli Cat was absolutely awesome, and now that that's gone, I'm loving Sultai mid-range decks that allow you to just like have some fun, play Oko in a format where it's not banned, and, you know, control the board state and go over the top of everyone.
So the Pioneer format is brand new. I've been trying not to think about it. It's been really, really hard to not get sucked into that while I'm preparing for this tournament. So I actually am really looking forward to having this tournament behind me and being able to dive in there, because I like exploring, you know, what to do in this new format. What are the top players and what are their weaknesses? And so I think I'm going to plan on waiting a little bit for the dust to settle in terms of which cards are going to show up and which cards are going to be successful, which cards are going to get banned. Once the dust is settled, I look to kind of see how do I attack those decks that are rising to the top. And so I'm looking forward to that. Haven't done it yet, but it's exciting to think about Pioneer.
Yeah. Pioneer is, you know, very cool format. Unfortunately, I didn't have too much time to practice for it, but I have this cool idea in my head that is Mono Blue Devotion. I made two Channel Fireball video with Mono Blue Devotion. So that's definitely a deck that I can't wait to just leave it up in paper and play.
And welcome back. So let's take a look at the sideboards here, Paul, because now we're transitioning into what is going to end up being a traditional best 2 out of 3 match, given that both players have split a game. Here's Paulo Vitor Damo's sideboard. This is only a card different from what Ondřej Stráský's brought to the table. What are the cards that jump out to you?
Well, I think kind of the MVP, at least of the top 8 from what we've seen, is Gadwick the Wizened. Just having an additional card to kind of refill up your hand, I think is extremely important. So that's a card that's certainly coming in. Now, Veil of Summer is actually an interesting one as well, because one of the most important cards rather in the matchup is Mass Manipulation, at least in pre-sideboarded games. And now having access to this powerful counterspell means that all of a sudden your opponent can't just simply load up all their mana and try to steal all your permanents because you have access to this Veil. But who's to say 4 is the proper number, right? Because oftentimes this is just going to be stranded in your hand. So interested to see how many copies of the Veil of Summer they bring in, because I can't imagine it's going to be 0.
So you see the sideboards, again, only 1 card different, but players are all set here for game number 3. They've split a game apiece. If you're just joining us, welcome. It's great to have you along for the finals, where we have Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. He's playing Simic Food. Also on Simic Food is Ondřej Stráský. And as I mentioned a second ago, they have each split the first 2 games. So we're going to play best 2 out of 3 to see who can take home the big prize and all that comes along with it. For this one, though, it's Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa kicking things off with an island.
Another interesting card, and I think this is going to be very play draw dependent, is the card Mystical Dispute.
I was just thinking of that.
I think if you're on the draw, you might want to consider bringing in Mystical Dispute, because that's the only way you can interact with the potential perfect draw of turn 1 Gilded Goose into turn 2 Oko. If you're on the draw, you're simply only going to have access to that 1 island. So Mystical Dispute kind of gives you that clean answer and makes it so that your opponents can't just run away with the game with a turn 2 Oko.
Paulo's got a little slower of a start here. He's got the Paradise Druid on turn 2, no Goose to be seen. And it looks like it's going to be the same thing from Stráský. In fact, identical openers from both of them. Paulo draws his card for the turn. Does he have an Oko to deploy right now? It looks like he does. And there's Oko, Thief of Crowns. The unequivocal dominant card in the format. Makes a food token. Seems so innocent, you know, just make a food token. What's the big deal? But it turns out
it's a big deal.
It's a very big deal. Here's Ondřej Stráský. He's going to fight back a little here with a play that you actually see quite commonly out of this deck, which is Hydroid Krasis for 2. Gives him a threat. He gets to draw a card, gain a life.
Yeah, and this is often something that you'll see if you have a Wicked Wolf in hand and you have no targets.
Yep.
Might as well just run out the Krasis, try to kind of smooth out your draws. It's a flying threat, so you can at least kind of prevent the Oko from, you know, running rampant, at least kind of keep it in check a little bit.
Oh, look at this.
Ooh, and this is brutal.
Pulling the old switcheroo. Here, have a food token on me, and look at this Wicked Wolf to follow up, which is going to kill the Hydroid Krasis. And
what
man,
just happened?
Paulo just played a Gilded Goose after that. Look at the board all of a sudden. Holy smokes. That was a heck of a turn for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. Talk about getting ahead.
He had a Paradise Druid and an Oko before this, and now he has 4 creatures in play, a Planeswalker, and a food that he can animate to an empty board here from Stráský. Now,
hold on. It wasn't a complete disaster. Stráský ended up with a food token.
yeah. Yeah.
I made you a pie.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow, this could be a repeat of what we saw in the last game, but in the other direction here. Paulo absolutely crushing here right out of the gates.
This is ridiculous. And check out what might happen here. Paulo has access to 7 mana. This could be a Gadwick for 4. Okay.
Paulo's going to draw 4 extra cards this turn, keeping massive pressure on Ondřej Stráský. You know how we were talking about the tug of war as kind of an analogy for how this matchup goes? Well, this is Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa saying, I don't think I want to have you even get in the game.
But wait, there's more.
Come on, Paulo. Another Gilded Goose?
He's got triple Ondřej's permanents.
Unbelievable. You know, it's funny because in his semifinal, Paulo had to do some really, really clever plays, some playing around stuff, some really smart awareness of what his opponent could do or not do. It's been a little simpler for him this time.
Yeah.
Tap every bit of mana that you have and just dump your hand on the table.
Well, I mean, so that's the thing with this deck. You have so many different options. You have so many different avenues of potentially outplaying your opponent, right? Every turn, there's a lot of different decisions that you can make, and you can leverage your skill advantage to pick up a bunch of wins. At the same time, this deck is also capable of extremely explosive starts like the one that you've seen here.
Yeah, you know, I think low-key one of the most important plays here was stealing the Paradise Druid. That gave Paulo Vitor a significant mana advantage in addition to the board that he got out of it. And he's really never looked back. Now he can just trade off Gadwick here for the food token that Oko just woke up. And I admire Ondřej Stráský for fighting the fight here, but how do you come back from that? By the way, I also noticed that off of the 4 cards drawn from Gadwick, there was both Nissa and Mass Manipulation among them. So it's just like, come on.
He doesn't even need the Nissa if you want. He can steal everything right now if he wants, just with all the mana creatures that he has in play. Nissa time.
He's going to run out Nissa, who shakes the world. Uh-oh, that's Breeding Pool getting untapped. Did he find an Ether Gust, too? He did.
Why not?
Just
Why not?
has all of it. He's also going to get in for a very nice attack this turn.
Yeah,
At least the 2 3/3s.
Oko yet.
Sorry, the 3 3/3s. You're right, Paul. And if he wants, he may even throw away one of these Paradise Druids to trade for the Hydrate Krasis. The interesting thing here too is he just need to focus on Oko at this point, or is it time to start going for the life total already?
Yeah, he might just consider. Okay, so he does want to make sure that he kills Oko and also get in for as much damage here as possible, while also keeping up an Ether Gust just in case.
Like you do.
So Stráský has the option here of, I suppose, trading with a Paradise Druid with that Hydrate Krasis.
Yeah, he could chump block but still lose Oko, so that's really his best option.
Which means he's going to take 6, lose an Oko, and kill a Paradise Druid.
His own.
His own
Probably.
Paradise Druid. Yeah.
Yikes. No, he's just going to go ahead and let Oko go. Take 6, go down to 13, and land before passing the turn back to Stráský, who has just had really no way to fight back into this game thus far.
So what can we do here? Stráský does have a Mass Manipulation in hand, so
you can
that would be a start.
Nissa. Yeah, steal Nissa. Then what?
You can steal Nissa, untap a land, that'll give you some blockers, and then
And it looks like Paulo's just going to get in the way of that with his own Ether Gust. And that is going to do it for game number 3. Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa shut the door early on that one and really never gave Ondřej Stráský a chance to get back in. Whoa, that was blistering.
This is not how any of the other food matchups have gone.
No, not even close. You and I were in for the quarterfinals. Then Riley and Eduardo did the other quarterfinals. They each lasted about 2.5 hours to get through the 2 best-of-5s. Then our semifinals, you and I split that with Eduardo and Riley because it went so long. And now it's just like bang, bang, and we're down to 2 games left at the most.
Two games to 1. I mean, maybe it's just the nature of these draws, but you know, it's just kind of been one of the matches where just somebody gets a bunch of mana creatures in play, and then Oko just kind of dominates the game.
Yeah, you know, I think it is easy to forget here. We are not watching Sultai, right? The Sultai mirror is the one where they play a thing, and then you have an answer for it, but they leave something behind, and then that happens a bunch of times, and then there's a bunch of things left on the board. Then you kind of wait for a big haymaker to come clean everything up, or for somebody to generate enough incremental advantage to finally be able to push through. In Simic, it's not like that quite as much. Sure, you still have the haymakers and stuff, but it's much harder to get things off the battlefield permanently, and so these you can snowball these and win pretty easily.
Yeah,
that's what we've been seeing.
With all the additional bounce spells, things just kind of, the matchup has just been playing out a little bit differently. At the same time, I think this has also just been a case of one person just getting far superior draws than the other in the games.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we've seen here. Off to that quick start, and then the ability to just slam the door on the game thanks to the tempo plays that this Simic list has available to it. Hey, this one could be over quickly. Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa up 2 games to 1 over Ondřej Stráský. We're going to take a short break while they get shuffled up and sideboarded. When we come back, we'll have game number 4. Don't go anywhere.
Recently, the deck that I've played at the MC level, I've always been like the tier 1, like the best decks. I just come in the tournament with the best deck. And with my teammates, very often that involves practicing the mirror match. When I was more like a lower level at the PTs, we usually were practicing to see which was the best deck and then playing that deck, but really didn't focus too much in the mirror. But now, recently, I'm just starting to practice. Me and Javier start to practice way more the mirror match than before because we can identify what's the best deck and then just have like a full day of mirror match. So I would suggest starting by actual practicing the mirror match before the event, because a lot of people just, you know, are very new to this. They don't know very much what to do in these things. But yeah, and then other than that, basically all you've learned for yourself by playing the game, you can put in your opponent. So like if your opponent does a play that you see yourself doing, sometimes you can identify what do they have in their hand and stuff like that. Also sideboarding. For example, I'm playing Sultai this PT, and it's very, very complicated to sideboard. For example, on the draw, you might like Disdainful Stroke, and on the play, you might like Veil of Summer. So whenever you are the person on the play, you have to remember that your opponent is on the draw and is having Disdainful Stroke and not Veil of Summer. So you can kind of put all the skills that you learn for yourself into your opponent in these little things.
In the constructed mirror match, specifically for food mirrors, it's very important to save your removal for the right targets. Ogo, Thief of Crowns, it's a very powerful card, but it's much stronger in the early game than it is in the late game. So maybe it's turn 5 or 6, you don't need to kill it right away, and it's best to save your removal spell for Anissa.
If you guys are facing a mirror match, you just have to set all the turns, think about 2-3 turns ahead, because this format is all about snowballing planeswalkers. So you have to kill their planeswalkers while having your planeswalkers.
If you ever find yourself in a constructed mirror match, I would say that it's really important to figure out for game 3 how your opponent's sideboarded. Since you both have the same cards, there's a lot of different things you guys can do and you can game each other like next level. So I think it's really important to pay attention to that.
Well, one of the things to realize about a mirror match is you're still playing a normal game of Magic. And even though you might have the same cards in your deck, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the same cards in your hand or the same sequence of draws. So identifying patterns is good, but you should also recognize the particulars of the situation and play to whatever advantage you have in that particular game. Yeah, I'm really excited to play with Pioneer. I've been sort of exploring it. You know, searching Gatherer to find out what cards that maybe I expected to be legal aren't around in Pioneer, and what cards I remember from the old days that are going to be really fun to build around. So far, I've had the greatest success with Sultai midrange, which is just right up my alley. A lot of my favorite cards, Thoughtseize, Planeswalkers, everything like that. But it also seems like there's a lot of great combo potential, so it's going to be a great format to explore.
So Pioneer looks really sweet. It's kind of like when they started Modern, that was originally like the format of the sets that I'd played with. And Pioneer is kind of the sets I've played with like on a professional level. And so it's got a lot of, the coolness of Modern with the kind of freshness of Standard in some ways, and a lot less broken things maybe going on. It's pretty cool. I like the banning of fetch lands to start with. Makes it so you have to work for your mana base, so not everybody's just playing a mishmash of all the most powerful cards. And I think there's a lot of cool decks that have come out, but even more yet to be explored. And I'm not going to give that away because there's the tournament next year where hopefully I'll come up with something sweet.
Well, Pioneer is so fun. I really like that there's like some bannings to make the format like is safe. And I didn't have enough time to play it, but I enjoyed a lot of some streams and some decks. So I think the format is like a success for sure.
This format, Pioneer, I think it's pretty interesting. I didn't dwell too much on it, but I saw so many cool decks, so I'm hyped about it. Yeah.
Pioneer looks like a lot of fun, but I try to stay out of it. I need to keep my focus on Standard and Limited, or my mind will get lost. So right after this tournament gets over, I'll jump into Pioneer.
And welcome back. Thanks so much for sticking with us here through what has been a pretty quick 2 games. First game took a little while, but the first 2, bang, bang, we're on to game number 4. Let's take a look at how our players got here, though. We've had quite a day. Austin Burcevic came in as the #1 seed versus Sebastian Pazzo. Pazzo defeated him to move on to the semi. It was 2 big hitters, Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa and Andrew Cuneo, fighting it out in our other quarterfinal. Ultimately, as you know, Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa won that one. Eli Cassis and Oscar Christensen had a nice 5-game match there too. It was ultimately Oscar with Sultai Food who got by the Golgari Adventure deck of Cassis, and then Louis Del Tour and Ondřej Stráský kicked off in the morning as well, and that was Ondřej Stráský winning. Also, just kind of an interesting thing of note, if you look, all of the lower seeds actually advanced to the semifinals. That set up Sebastian Pazzo versus Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, which came down to a thrilling 5-game conclusion with Paulo mulliganing to 5 in the last game and somehow finding the victory to put himself into the finals. Oscar Christensen and Ondřej Stráský duked it out, but ultimately Ondřej found the victory, and now we're right there in the finals. Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. One thing I wanted to mention here as well, Paul, as we work our way back down to the feature match area, Paulo is looking to put himself into some extremely exclusive company. If he can win this, he will be a 3-time Mythic Champion / Pro Tour champion. And there are very few people that have done that historically. And they're some of the best players ever, as you might imagine, along with Paulo here, like John Finkel, Kai Bude, etc.
And he's already in that conversation, right? Just the best.
Yes.
He's currently still playing. Kai and John don't participate in as many events, whereas Paulo still is a professional Magic player. And it's still a bit unreal to me. Every single year, he seems to at least get 1 top 8.
It's
Meanwhile, everybody else dreams of getting their first top 8. We have several players. I mean, you saw the excitement and joy in their eyes when you had announced them into the top 8, right? It's the dream. And Paulo, this is his 13th top 8.
I know.
It's incredible. And if he wins this, Kai, John, and Dirk Babarewski.
Those are the ones with 3.
Those are the ones with 3.
Unbelievable. You know, it's funny. I did the top 8 announcement last night. One of my favorite things about the whole weekend, it's so fun with the crowd there and everybody's so happy. And when Paulo got up to him, I kind of put the mic down and I said, "Has it been a year already?" And he goes, "Yes."
Yeah, he was due.
Because it's like, it's so crazy. He does really seem to top 8 one of these things every single year. It's incredible. Which, you might think, well, once a year, but, there's only 4 of them. It's like, it's really hard. Yeah. All right. Looks like Paradise Druids to kick things off for both players, but Ondřej Stráský is the one who's on the play here, so hoping to leverage the mana advantage that he has. So let's see it looks like he's going to go into the tank here. Maybe he doesn't have anything super great to do this turn. Certainly no Oko. I feel like we would have seen that already.
Yeah, he's got a Gadwick.
Oof, another copy of Paradise Druid. Now, this is the type of thing that can set up the Nissa next turn guaranteed, but currently Stráský does not have Nissa in hand. And it looks like the same exact opener here for both players. 3 lands, 2 Paradise Druids. Can Stráský find some action here? No, it's another forest off the top of the library.
Yeah, but he might actually just choose to run out Gadwick here, right? Because Gadwick is the card that can't get Ether Gusted, right? So if you run it out, you're guaranteed to draw the cards. But he actually also has Hydrate Crisis, which doesn't care about counter magic or bounce because it is a cast trigger. Even if you counter it, you're going to draw your cards, get your value.
Paulo's still thinking here, though. He does have Petty Theft.
Yep. Paulo can have an okay turn, and he's really just wondering what he wants to do. What's his path to victory here? He has the ability to bounce a permanent. He's got Brazen Borrower and Ether Gust.
And he is going to use Petty Theft here.
Look at this.
That signals to me that he wants to play Nissa Who Shakes the
yeah.
World and protect it from that attacker in the air.
Absolutely. So he can now slam Nissa, untap, attack, and because he has a Breeding Pool in play, he can still also keep up Breeding Pool. So he's really going for the tempo play because, you know, of course, bouncing a Hydrate Crisis is not the most ideal long-term strategy.
That's exactly what he's going to do, Paul. Just as you mapped it out, 3 damage comes in, and he gets to leave up Breeding Pool for Ether Gust. And you know what he's going to try to set up for here as well is really the late game 1-2 punch that this deck uses to power itself through, which is untap with Nissa, play Hydrate Crisis, because you get that mana advantage and it can be really, really big, where if you resolve that Crisis, you just put your opponent in such a bad position where you're good going forward with the cards, and they have this huge Crisis there that they have to deal with as well.
Yeah, if Paulo attacks, he's going to have access to 10 mana. That means he can play an 8-8 Hydrate Crisis. If he plays a Breeding Pool or a Forest, he can play a 10-10 Hydrate Crisis.
Okay, it looks like Ondřej's going to be content to just run out the Hydrate Crisis once again.
Yeah,
and we're going to see Ether Gust here.
I mean, Paulo's going to draw something like 4 or 5 cards this turn anyways. Might as well just go for the tempo here and continue to get this advantage with the Nissa. And I mean, things are looking really bad here for Ondřej. I mean, he had a nice start in terms of ramping and drawing cards, but Paulo just has a superior board position here.
Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa might be taking steps towards that 3rd championship here, putting himself in company, frankly, he's already in, but further solidifying himself as one of the absolute all-time greats. We call them the GOATs, the greatest of all time. And Paulo's on that list already. But boy, the history books will show it very clearly based on his long-term success of 14 top finishes and his ability to close on Sunday if he can pick up this 3rd win here. Again, there's only a few players that have ever done it, and when you look at the names, you're like, right, those are the best players ever.
Yeah. So the thing Paulo's considering here is just how big do I want my Crisis to be? Do I want to get attacks in with my lands as well, or do I just want to draw additional cards? Because if he wants to maximize... Okay, so it looks like, yeah, he can poke in for the 3 and then now dump all of his mana here and cast a gigantic Hydrate Crisis. 2 green in the pool. 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He has access to 10 mana here.
He's considering leaving the Paradise Druids back, perhaps?
Yeah, and if he does that, that gives him the ability to potentially draw Ether Gust or Brazen Borrower and have that as an interactive spell.
Right.
But that would be at the cost of a card, and he's also not 100% sure that he's going to have... he's not 100% sure that he's going to draw that card. But on top of that, he could draw Veil of Summer, right? How does Ondřej get back into this? Mass manipulation.
Yes.
Right? So in order to potentially play around that, he's playing it a little more conservatively here with the Hydrate Crisis, not tapping out, in case he drew a Veil of Summer or a Counterspell.
Okay, he passes the turn back, and it doesn't look like he found one of those, but we'll get the hands updated shortly here to know for sure. He certainly found a lot of gas with that Hydroid Crisis, so he has loaded up his hand, though I don't see a ton of interaction in there, at least just from the quick shuffles from above here.
I mean, imagine if Stráský did have a Mass Manipulation. He would have taken a Nissa and a 6/6 Hydroid Crisis this turn.
Yeah, Paulo did not find any interaction. He found 3 copies of Oko, 2 Hydroid Crisis, and a Once Upon a Time. He can cast the Once Upon a Time, but that's all he's going to be able to do after that. The good news from his perspective, that's a lot of action, and he's way, way ahead on board right now. Also, even if he does have to hold his breath a little bit about if Ondřej's going to have a Mass Manipulation, he doesn't.
And this is just a result of Paulo being extremely familiar with this matchup and thinking multiple turns ahead of time, right?
Right.
It is not very intuitive to bounce a Hydroid Crisis when your opponent has access to all that mana, but he already mapped it out. I'm going to bounce your Crisis. I'm going to play my Nissa. I'm going to untap my land. I'm going to Aether Gust your next play. Then I'm going to untap. I'm going to play Crisis. And I don't care if you're going to draw cards because I'm going to be up more cards because I'm going to untap with Nissa and I'm going to have all these permanents in play.
And you can see what's happened here. Ondřej has a full grip of cards. That is not the problem for him. It's just getting on board and getting something to stick. He has not been able to do so. It looks like he's trying to craft a game plan here, perhaps around Nissa Who Shakes the World, and then using the extra mana to dump as many cards from his hand as he can. But we'll find out here.
Is this a Crisis, maybe?
Oh, this is interesting. He's tapping a lot more mana here. Is it Gadwick? Jeez. It's funny because this is a strong play. He gets to draw 3 cards. But honestly, this looks like desperate to me, right? Like, this was not the most efficient way for him to empty out his hand. It's not. I mean, he had 7 cards in his hand. When he cast Gadwick, he's up to 10 now.
Yeah, he doesn't really need more cards here.
So it looks like he's digging for something, probably Mass Manipulation.
He did find an Aether Gust here, so he can actually use this during Paulo Vitor's draw step. And if he does this is also interesting. He can actually potentially cast Aether Gust in response to Once Upon a Time, put Nissa on top of Paulo's library.
He didn't, though.
He didn't.
Because remember, you can't take Nissa with Once Upon a Time.
Right.
So she would end up on the bottom of the library somewhere.
I think Ondřej is valuing his life total even more here, right? Because if he does bounce Nissa on Paulo's draw step, he can also get a trigger from Gadwick and tap down that 6/6 Hydroid Crisis, which would save him a lot of life.
Okay, and that's exactly what he's going to do here, Paul. He's on the draw step. He's going to use Aether Gust to return Nissa to hand. Boy, he would have loved to use that opportunity to get rid of Nissa permanently, but like you mentioned, this saves him a lot of life thanks to that trigger from Gadwick. It lets him tap down a non-land permanent. In this case, it's going to be the Crisis, which is a 6/6 flying trampler.
Yeah, great play here to prevent Paulo from having access to a ton of mana this turn with that Nissa, while also saving a lot of damage.
Remember, we're in Paulo's draw step right now, so there's only certain things that he can do. It's got to be instant speed.
Does he have an instant he can play here? No, it doesn't look like it.
He doesn't. He's really just deciding whether he wants to put Nissa on the top or bottom. He's going to go for top. You can see why. But as we know, he's already drawn his card for the turn. So he's going to go ahead and attack in with both of his lands. And it looks like Stráský's interested in trading off for the breeding pool here. Down to 13 goes Stráský, and you should keep a close eye on his life total here too, because as much as it's been about cards in hand for these players, Paulo has been applying pressure to Stráský's life total, and he's going to continue to do so. Here's another Hydroid Crisis. He now has 10 power in the air.
Stráský needs a Mass Manipulation here.
He doesn't have one in his hand just yet. He could rip one. That was a Veil of Summer. Has this one slipped away from Stráský?
Well, I mean, he's going to take 10 in the air here with both of the Crazies that are on Paulo's side. What does he have to work with? He has an Oko Thief of Crowns. He can actually make it so that the 6/6 Hydra Krasis is a little more manageable. If he uses Oko and turns it into a 9/9 ground creature, he might be able to find enough chump blockers to kind of get in the way there. But he's got a pretty big hill to climb. And remember, Paulo still has that Nissa Who Shakes the World in hand, along with a mass manipulation of his own.
It really just feels like Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa has engineered this game such that he's the one who's left with all this super powerful stuff, especially given that Ondřej Stráský has not yet been able to find a mass manipulation. That was what he needed to steal those Crazies and try to turn this thing back in his favor. As it stands, he's going to cast Nissa Who Shakes the World and I guess an Oko here. Stráský deep in the tank. He knows he's way behind the Hall of Famer Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa and is going to have everything go perfectly from here if he's going to win. And probably the top card of his library is going to have to cooperate with him at least next turn, if not the turn after. So he's going to go for Oko plus Gilded Goose. Curious to see what he does with Oko. Yeah. He could knock one of the Crazies down to the ground. It's huge, but he could at least interact with it.
Yeah, I think he wants to shrink the 6/6, or not shrink.
Grow
shrink, grow. How you know what I? You know, he's not. He wants to remove trample.
Yes, and trample and flying.
Right
there we go.
So now that has been, I guess, downgraded to a 9/9. Which makes it a little more manageable here for Stráský.
Yeah, but he knows he can block that with his Paradise Druid at the minimum, so it makes it manageable. He looks like he's got another Paradise Druid as well, plus the Nissa activation. So all told, Stráský really was able to, you know, do that tug of war that we were talking about where he had a huge turn, but now it's back to Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, and look at that hand.
That was a fantastic turn. He put so many threats on the battlefield, and again, turning that Hydro Krasis into a 9/9. I mean, there are plenty of things to get in the way of that ground creature. So now the only credible threat that Paulo has is the flyer in the Hydro Krasis.
Yeah, it's only a 4/4. Stráský's at 11, and he has a food token. Plus, he has a Gilded Goose to help mitigate those attacks. If he can get it so that he's only taking the 4 in the air, well, he could certainly survive.
Now, one additional threat that Paulo does have is that Brazen Borrower, which is currently on an adventure, which would mean that that's an additional flying threat for Paulo. And if you look at Paulo's hand, he actually has another Hydroid Krasis in hand. That would be Krasis number 3.
He's going to go for mass manipulation to take away the opposing Nissa.
But here is the counter.
As we saw, Veil of Summer from Ondřej Stráský. Stráský says, no way.
Wow, and he drew an Ether Gust off the Veil of Summer. He's going to have an additional interaction point here if Paulo has something else.
Ondřej Stráský fighting and scrapping his way back in. The one thing that Paulo didn't draw with all of these cards is any interaction. It's all Planeswalkers, Hydroid Crazies, but no Veils, no Ether Gusts here after he kind of got set up. Ondřej Stráský says, I'm thinking about my blocks. The block on the 9/9 seems obligatory, but he does have an option on this forest. Would he like to actually trade off this breeding pool for it, or will he need that going down the line? Ondřej very interested in keeping his life total as high as possible, especially given the Brazen Borrower that you mentioned a minute ago that Paulo has on an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, given that Stráský doesn't have, you know, one of the big heavy hitters, one of the X-Spells, and he already has 6 lands in play, I think he wants to make the trade here.
He says, okay, I'm going to block like this. So that's a chump block with the Paradise Druid, but a trade with the lands. And Paulo passes the turn. This last turn sequence has been a disaster for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, who looked like he was so far ahead.
Yeah, and I think Stráský's, I mean, he's turned it around. Keep in mind, the one issue with Stráský was not, you know, the power level of the cards in his hand, but it was just being able to deploy them in time. Paulo, remember, at an earlier point in the game, multiple times actually, have bounced Hydroid Krasis to kind of tempo Stráský out. But if Stráský is able to turn the corner here and just start deploying everything that he drew, then he's going to be the one who's going to be ahead because he's so far up on cards.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if I'll remind you, just a couple of turns ago, Stráský was discarding to hand size at the end of turn. He discarded 2 cards. He had 9 in his hand. That was after his turn was over. But he got that critical window, which is a Nissa turn, right? You get a turn with all the extra mana that Nissa provides, and when you have, you know, 5, 6, 7 spells in your hand, you can really unload, and we saw that last turn here. Ondřej's actually just using Castle Vantress here?
Yeah, I mean, there's a consideration of potentially turning the Castle Vantress into a 3/3 and getting another activation out of it, maybe.
Cute. I like it. I think he did put one on top, one on bottom as well, so that's got to be good news for Ondřej. Interestingly, again, Paulo, without really ways to interact, and he is down significantly on mana, but he does have Nissa Who Shakes the World, Oko, and Hydroid Krasis in hand, so he does have some power. And here we go, right back at you, says Ondřej Stráský. He's going to use his Ether Gust to get that Hydroid Krasis out of here.
Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense because Stráský doesn't have a way to actually defend against the Krasis, and that 4/4 flying Krasis is threatening a lethal attack on the Nissa, right? The Nissa is currently sitting at 2 loyalty, so Ondřej really wants to preserve that Nissa, so he's choosing to go for, I mean, the same thing that Paulo did in the previous turn, right? Preserve your Planeswalker, bounce your Krasis, and hope to just kind of win by making sure I just have more permanence on the battlefield.
Stráský also had a backup Goose there, so he could have protected Nissa regardless. Would have taken both of his geese, though, to do so. And let's see what he lines up here. Super impressed by Stráský this game. He kept his focus even when it looked like Paulo had an almost insurmountable lead, and has now whittled his way all the way back into this game and looks like he's actually ahead.
Yeah, I mean, he's starting to attack now.
And Paulo looking to take a bunch of damage here. He just can't really do anything. He's completely tapped out. Stráský trying to decide what he can get away with here as far as attacks goes. Perhaps both Paradise Druids.
Yeah, he needs to make a decision as to which creature he's going to use to chump block the 9/9 Hydroid Krasis. And that's basically it. It might just be that island.
Yeah, it's got the island and the 2 Gilded Geese there at the ready. This is a big, big, big turn for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, because he needs to get things back on track here. You got to feel like if Ondřej gets another turn with the resources that he has available, it's going to be really tough for Paulo to fight back there without getting lucky, you know, something great happening.
Yeah, I think Paulo needs to just run out this Nissa and try to untap and then deploy the Hydroid Krasis in his hand.
Okay.
Ondřej has a significant mana advantage with that Nissa in play, and of course also has the ability to make 2 3/3s next turn.
Yeah, boy, Ondřej is so far ahead on mana here. 7 lands, 2 Paradise Druid, 2 Gilded Geese, versus now 5 lands, 2 Paradise Druid, and both of them have Nissa thanks to Paulo waking up the island there with his Nissa Who Shakes the World, which just hit the battlefield.
And look at this, not even choosing to attack the Nissa here, knowing that Stráský is going to block and would rather have an additional blocker here so that Stráský doesn't attack with those Paradise Druids that are in play.
Paulo passes the turn back to Stráský.
And he did scry us to the top, I believe?
Yeah. Stráský's doing math.
Wow, that is a good one to keep on top.
What was it?
Hydroid Krasis
Whoa.
was the card that he scried on top. And take a look at this. He's got 4 forests in play. That means that's 8 mana, 2 other lands, 10, 2 Gilded Geese, 2 Paradise Druid. I mean, he can draw a lot of cards this turn.
Go for 12?
He could. Typically what we've seen, though, is that the players don't max out when they cast a Krasis. They want to give themselves outs to maybe drawing, you know, interactive spells or protection spells. Cards like Veil of Summer or Brazen Bower or Aether Gust.
All right, Stráský's going to put it on the stack. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this will be for 8. That'll draw him 4 cards.
15? Yeah.
And this could be it here, because Stráský, if he can find a lot of action here, this could power him into the late game. And he hit all lands and a goose or something?
One of the cards might have been a Once Upon a Time.
Okay, Once Upon a Time and 3 lands or a goose and stuff. Wow, that was not that great for him.
It wasn't. I mean, it's a similar thing happened with Paulo where he drew 3 Okos off the Hydra Krasis that he cast. But, I mean, at the end of the day, still 8/8 Flying Trampler in play.
Yes.
The Once Upon a Time still digs pretty deep, so pretty likely to find some kind of threat here. Ideally, he just wants to find another Hydra Krasis, but
Yeah,
you know, maybe even a Wicked Wolf.
It was Once Upon a Time Gilded Goose Forest Island. Now he uses the minus ability on Oko to steal Paulo's island, giving him a food.
Just going for the mana denial strategy here. Currently, Paulo doesn't really have anything to do with that food.
Four cards in hand for Paulo.
You know, Paulo just has had a much tougher road getting into the finals. Both matches going the distance, going all 5 games. Meanwhile, Stráský, I believe, going 3-1 in both of his matches.
Stráský's going to get very aggressive here. He's just going to attack with everything.
Yeah, curious to see what he's attacking. I imagine it's Nissa based on this attack.
Right, and this actually forces Paulo to chump block with a Paradise Druid just to keep Nissa on the battlefield. And Once Upon a Time here for Stráský.
Wow, he just hit a goose.
Yikes. So that Krasis plus that Once Upon a Time yielded him 2 Gilded Geese and 2 lands.
I'm actually curious how many Wicked Wolves he chose to keep in, because we just saw how poorly positioned they seem to be against all these bounce spells. So it's possible he boarded them out, in which case he doesn't really have a whole lot of threats left that he can find with the Once Upon a Time. It's the 4 copies of Hydroid Krasis along with the 1 Gadwick.
Well, 4 geese on the battlefield here for Ondřej Stráský before he passes the turn back to Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. He's on 13 life versus 15 life for Stráský. This has been a very back and forth a game here in game number 4. The prior 2 games, not so much. They were very one-sided, and then the game before that was a nice even one as well.
And now Paulo's going to be able to play a big Hydroid Krasis of his own here.
He's going to take 2 off of Breeding Pool, thinking, well, I'm going to get a bunch back anyway.
I think he wants to also untap. I think he wants to make his own 8/8 Hydroid Krasis just so that it can trade with the one that Stráský has on his side of the battlefield. For him to do that, he needs to untap a land. Okay, it looks like he's not going to do that. He's going to make a 6/6 Krasis here.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case. As you said, though, that doesn't actually match up well against the opposing Hydroid Krasis. And especially because it would actually leave Nissa, Who Shakes the World, dead to a block in the air.
Yeah, so now Stráský just has a clean attack here, right? He just attacks with the 8/8 Hydroid Krasis. It has trample.
Yeah.
And that can finish off the Nissa. So even if Paulo blocks Nissa down, I don't think Paulo has mana to cast a Brazen Borrower here. He only has that Breeding Pool up, so he only has access to 2 mana. Had he had 3, he could run out the Brazen Borrower and double block and trade and also make Nissa go down to 1.
1 instead of 0, yeah. Players really taking their time now, and it makes sense. We're in the finals, and as you can see, this board has gotten very complicated. All of the permanents on Ondřej's side plus the middle of the table are his. Everything else is Paulo's.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Stráský has an attack for the win here.
Does look like he's trying to line it up, though, doesn't he?
See, Paulo's currently sitting at 14. He's got several blockers in play, too. Those are the potential attackers. Of course, 2 more attackers can be created with Nissa and Oko Thief of Crowns. So that'll be a total of 7 attackers, potentially. Meanwhile, Paulo here, it looks like he's got 3 blockers and the ability to sacrifice a food and gain 3 life with that breeding pool. Effectively at 17 here.
But this is a nice attack here for Stráský. He gets to send in, if he'd like, at Nissa, who shakes the world with his 8/8 flying trampler, and Paulo really just can't do much about it. Did we speak too soon?
Nope.
We did not. That's Once Upon a Time.
And now I think, you know, Stráský is also interested in, of course, keeping that Nissa alive. So we might see we might see the same thing that he did to the other Hydrate Crisis, and we might see Stráský again shrink, quotes,
right,
the Hydrate Crisis, make it lose all the relevant text on the card, and turn it just into a giant ground creature.
Finds a Wicked Wolf.
Which would then give Paulo a pair of 9/9s on the ground.
But it just seems so difficult for those to get through in any timely fashion. So he says, all right, your 8/8 trampler is going to hit my Nissa, who shakes the world.
Okay, so he did not go for the shrink, or the he did not go for the play of turning the Hydrate Crisis into an elk.
So now Paulo just gets to keep his 6/6 flying trampler and attack Nissa?
He can. Stráský can still keep it alive with some chump blocks here with the Gilded Geese. If he just puts 1 in front of the Hydrate Crisis, it'll only trample over for 4 damage, keeping the Nissa alive.
But he's going to do it anyway. Stráský is just going to be a little safer here and throw 2 geese in front.
This also allows Stráský to play around a potential Brazen Borrower or some bounce spell, because if Paulo had a way to bounce, then if you single block, the giant Hydra Crisis would deal the full 6 points of damage and finish off the Nissa, who shakes the world.
One of the benefits of trample is if the creature leaves, the player takes all the damage, or the planeswalker in that case. So Stráský being very careful here, but he does get to keep Nissa, who shakes the world, on the battlefield. She's down to 3 loyalty.
Paulo nowhere near close to killing off the Hydrate Crisis with the Wicked Wolf, but might want to slow down some of the food production and kill off a Gilded Goose.
Okay, there's Oko Thief of Crowns now for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. Once again, Stráský's doing math.
Well, he's got a Mystical Dispute in hand. If he casts it, well, actually, Paulo can't even pay for this, right? So this might be a good opportunity, but Paulo might also, Stráský might still just let that resolve and wait for a better moment, because honestly, Paulo doesn't have access to a lot of mana anymore because he lost his Nissa.
That's right. He's very crimped on mana at this point. Land finishes things up here for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. We're going to see some food production from the geese. No, he's actually activating Castle Mattress. And was that mass manipulation?
That looked like a mass manipulation.
Oh, big smile from Stráský. And I think he thought maybe that he let Paulo see it on accident, though. Paulo will be seeing it soon enough. Thank you very much. He can clear the way of blockers and I assume just kill him.
I mean, he can steal everything.
Yeah. Steal all the things.
Everything. What was the biggest one we saw? Did we see one for 3 or 4 earlier?
3 minimum.
3, okay. So we might see one for 4.
3, yeah.
We have a Nissa in play. All the mana in the world here for Stráský. That Castle Vantress putting in a lot of work here in the late game.
Mm-hmm.
Blue, blue, blue.
Paulo's going to see the writing on the wall here. What are
Fourth
you
blue.
tapping all this mana for?
Every forest that he taps now is an additional creature that Stráský can steal. Now, rewinding a little bit, because of course this is a huge moment. Stráský is down a game here. If he resolves this mass manipulation, we're going to a game 5. But what if Paulo has a Veil of Summer?
Right. He has to explore the option, and that's why he's asking Paul, how many cards do you have? Could there be a Veil of Summer in there? Okay, he turned the big 6/6 flying trample into an elk. It's now a 9/9 on the ground, joining the other 9/9 elk on the ground. Are we going to see this mass manipulation now, though?
Well,
from
he's
Stráský?
got the mystical dispute here for backup too, right? So even a Veil wouldn't do it.
No, and that's going to do it for that game. Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa scoops him up, and look at the look on Ondřej Stráský's face. He is feeling every single moment of this finals here. Really, really tough stuff as he works his way through these complicated board states, and you can tell he's feeling the stress. Paulo, all he needed to do was see that mass manipulation hit the stack, and he's like, we're done.
Yeah, you got this. And, I mean...
Look at Paulo. He's like, hey, kid, act like you've been here before, you know?
Just think about I mean, that it seemed like this match or this game just started ages ago. But think about the whole progression of that game, right? Paulo taking the extremely aggressive line early, bouncing a 4/4 Hydra Crisis, running out Nissa, and at one point he had Nissa, Oko, an abundance of threats, and it looked like just Ondřej had nothing left. He was down to 10 or 12 life, and within one turn he was able to completely stabilize. And once Ondřej got to the position where he was able to stabilize the board, then he was able to, use all the extra resources that he had available to him because of the multiple times that the Hydra Crisis was bounced.
Yep.
And then clawed back into that game.
Yeah.
Nissa.
Yeah, he had the Nissa, so now it was just like, whoo, and he was able to get back in it. It didn't look like he was going to be able to, but he did. He's forcing a Game 5 decider here in the finals. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, it will be the finals. Don't go anywhere.
Just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. You'd be like heaven to touch. I wanna hold you so much. At long last, love has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. Quite has arrived, and I thank God I'm alive. You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you.
And welcome back. We're in the finals here of Mythic Championship VI. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. Take a look at the trophy there as we work our way back into the feature match area. And we've got two very, very good players playing very, very well in the finals. And of course, if you thought for 1 second that this was going to go to anything other than 5 games, you were wrong. We're in game number 5 to try to decide, or actually to decide, who is going to take that trophy, the money, the seat at the World Championship, everything on the line for these two players. And it was really interesting to see the demeanor after that drawn-out game 4. Stráský was just smiling and shaking his head and going, I can't believe I won that game. And Paulo was like, yeah, what? Been here before, you know?
I mean, I was convinced that Paulo was going to take that
Same.
that last game. I mean, he had such an advantage in terms of just tempo, permanence, and planeswalkers. And yeah, that one turn, there's so many different moments in that game where you could have been like, oh, there's a thing that Ondřej did that let him turn it around. One thing that I want to highlight was just that one turn where Paulo played out that once upon a time. And in response, Ondřej could have used Aether Gust to put Nissa on top of Paulo's library, but instead realizing that, you know, he needs to preserve his life total as much as he can so that he can play all the cards that he drew over the course of that game, and instead going with the tempo play later, or not the tempo play, but rather the play that allowed him to save 6 points of damage from the Hydroid Krasis and waited, casting the Aether Gust to tap down Hydroid Krasis on Paulo's turn with that Gadwick that he had in play.
Yeah, there's so many sweet plays there. You know, it's interesting because we've seen when players take the line of play that Paulo took, they win a lot. The thing that ended up happening for Paulo was all those extra cards that he drew, he actually was missing a key element, which were cards like Aether Gust or Brazen Borrower to interact. He just drew a bunch of Okos, a bunch more Krasis, and ultimately he needed some way to reach out and interact with what Ondřej was doing on a critical turn.
One thing I will note is Paulo actually only playing 2 copies of Aether Gust in his deck. That's the big difference. Stráský is playing the full 4. So Stráský has far more ways to interact at instant speed to counter some of the planeswalkers that might enter the battlefield.
Yeah, we also noted that one of the cuts he made was Wicked Wolf, which seems to benefit the mirror here as well, as Wicked Wolf doesn't end up being one of the key cards.
It didn't look to be extremely impressive, even when Paulo played it.
All
Also, there was a key Veil of Summer, right? I believe Stráský drew at the turn where Paulo went for that mass manipulation, and that really turned things around.
Yeah, that seemed to be the real moment when the shift went back towards Stráský. Looks like players are trying to decide mulligans, and by players, I mean Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. He has been looking at this one for a while. Oh, he's deciding what to put back, isn't he?
Is this 2 cards?
Is he on 5 again?
Oh, my.
He ended up mulliganing to 5. In game 5 of the semis, he is putting back 2 cards, Paul. This is a disaster for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa. Now, it is not impossible for him to win. He did win that game 5, as evidenced by the fact that he's sitting here. He is on the play, and he does have a Gilded Goose.
Yeah, if he still just goes land Gilded Goose, turn 2 Oko, which is what he did before, he can still get there.
Does he have the Oko? No, he plays an island and passes the turn back to Ondřej Stráský, who also had a Gilded Goose on turn 4. Does he have an Oko?
Yeah, the way that Paulo can win here off the Mold of 5 is, of course, having an explosive start, but also for Stráský to have a bit of a clunky start. That's how he was able to defeat Pozzo. Sebastian Pozzo kept a 7-card hand, but it was a little bit slow, and he really couldn't get the ball rolling. And Paulo, with that ideal start, was able to win that game. Now, this is different, right? Stráský has his own Gilded Goose turn 1, and he has a lot of different options.
Oko Thief of Crowns is among those options. He's trying to decide if he should put the pedal to the metal and play Oko, or if he should play a little more conservatively and leave up Ether Gust.
There's so many different things. You could run out the Oko. You can play Paradise Druid. There's even some merit to just playing a land and passing and just having the ability to make a food or Ether Gust to play.
He's going to go for the Oko Thief of Crowns, and it is going to resolve. That is a huge step forward here for Ondřej Stráský. Paulo Vitor's going to make another food token, play his land. He's going to play a breeding pool untapped
is
here.
this a wolf?
It looks like it might be that. No, it's a questing beast. He's going to get in for 4. That's going to knock Oko down to 2 loyalty as well. Out of the sideboard here for Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, and he's got a lot riding on this questing beast.
You know, this is actually a really interesting adjustment. He did not see any Wicked Wolves from Ondřej Stráský after sideboard. Wicked Wolf is one of the reasons why Questing Beast isn't especially good in this format. But if you think your opponent's going to board it out, all of a sudden, Questing Beast, especially if you're on the play, could be secretly a pretty solid card in this matchup.
The veteran Magic player bringing in perhaps a bit of a curveball from the sideboard here as Ondřej Stráský now looks at the board. He did get to untap with Oko, however, so it wasn't a complete disaster for him.
If this is a Hydrate Crisis, I mean, even that won't be able to block.
Wow.
However, Stráský can turn the Questing Beast into just a vanilla 3/3 creature here.
Of course, of course. Still, that would threaten.
Oh, no, he can actually turn his Hydrate Crisis into a 5/5.
Yeah, he can do that too. To try to force the trade here. Paulo has Ether Gust, and he can just get that Crisis out of there, and that will actually allow him to attack Ondřej's life total down to 13 while killing Oko.
But I think this is pretty much all Paulo has.
That was kind of it.
Right? Stráský is still sitting at 13 life, and he just has a Questing Beast that Stráský needs to deal with.
Paulo is completely out of gas here. He has 1 card left in hand. It's a land. And he's going to be very much at the mercy of the top of his library. He's going to need to find power cards like Nissa, who shakes the world, or similar off the top. If he finds a few lands, he could be done, and that was an island. Still, he is able to keep the pressure on with Questing Beast, but it's Breeding Pool go. And Ondřej Stráský's got to get back in this thing.
Yeah, but Stráský's looking pretty good here. Questing Beast is the only threat that Paulo had. If Paulo was able to follow up that Questing Beast with another threat, let's say Nissa or anything else, then we might have then it might be a much closer game. But right now, I mean, Stráský has an Ether Gust already in hand to deal with that Questing Beast, and now he has the ability to just also run out a 4/4 Hydra Crisis and further get ahead on cards.
Right, that will create a blocker for the Questing Beast as well. But he's not going to. He's just going to play patiently here, play Breeding Pool, tapped, and say go. Once again, Paulo Vitor is going to build up his food stock. He needs to find some action here off the top of his library, though. He cannot keep drawing lands and expect to win a game in which he mulliganed to 5.
Hydrate Crisis would be a very, very strong draw here, because even if Stráský did have something like an Ether Gust, he'd still be able to draw some cards.
The card he drew was Wicked Wolf. He'll take it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna complain too much. You just want to continue applying pressure. Stráský hasn't really played anything yet, so you have to feel like, I mean, any threat will be okay here, and he's gonna have to run it out.
Yikes! Stráský's down to 5 here, and let's not forget. Oh, he's not even gonna bother playing the Wicked Wolf here. Paulo Vitor just simply passes the turn back.
I see. He already knows that Stráský has. He already knows that Stráský has, of course, Hydra Crisis in hand because he Ether Gusted it. So he's actually waiting for Stráský to tap out, play the Hydra Crisis, then to run out the Wicked Wolf to kill the Hydra Crisis that Stráský plays.
So Stráský's going to use Ether Gust to put the Questing Beast back, in this case, on top of the library on end step. And now we're going to see a big Hydra Crisis here from Stráský. So this is for 6?
Yeah, I believe he took 2 from a breeding pool. But again, Stráský recognizing that, you know, your life total really, again, no reach, right? There's not a whole lot. So he's fairly safe here, even, taking 2 damage here from the breeding pool because he gets 1 of that life back because he cast Hydra Crisis with an even.
But now we're going to see this Wicked Wolf kill the Hydra Crisis thanks to the food stock that Paulo's. Look, if you don't draw anything, you get to make a bunch of food with your Gilded Goose, and it actually paid off there. Stráský down to 6, and of course the card in hand for Paulo is Questing Beast.
But Stráský, I don't think he had an answer, but now he drew mass manipulation off the top, so he can now steal this Wicked Wolf if he feels like it's going to be applying a little too much pressure.
Boy, this is close though. Look at Stráský's down to 6 life. He does have a food token, and he has a Gilded Goose, so this isn't where he's going to stay, but yikes. Stráský also found multiple copies, 3 Once Upon a Times, which are kind of clogging up his hand right now. Additional.
Yeah, running out of big Hydrate Krasis still going to mean that Stráský likely is going to have to chump block, because with that Gilded Goose in play, I mean, we're looking at a potential 9/9 Wicked Wolf next turn, as he can make a food this turn, or at the end of Stráský's turn, and then make an additional food on his.
But that is exactly what Stráský is going to do, and it makes perfect sense. He puts out a huge blocker for the Wicked Wolf, and he's going to gain life and draw cards as well. This one's for 4.
Yeah, Stráský really wants an interactive spell.
It looks like he found an Oko.
That's a little bit dangerous, because if he wants to run out the Oko, he's going to tap down 2 of his blockers that he has in play. He's going to lose the food. He's going to have to tap a Paradise Druid. And if he runs out the Oko and turns the Wicked Wolf into makes it lose the ability, it's still going to be potentially a lethal attack. And then if Paulo draws any kind of way to get that Hydra Krasis off the battlefield, he's just going to die.
That's right. So he can't do that. He's just going to go ahead and ship the turn back here. Again, Paulo with Questing Beast in hand seems to have drawn another Gilded Goose for the turn. You know, as well as Paulo has fought here, getting Ondřej's life total low, it is going to be so difficult to beat Ondřej after he's resolved these 2 copies of Hydrate Krasis, buffering his life total and the cards in hand.
And Ondřej does need to block here. He can actually just stack a food here as well.
Looks like he may just throw the goose under the bus, as it were.
Yeah, he could still block with the goose, make a token.
He's just going to block, no food token.
No food token.
He'd rather cast the
Once
Upon a Time. That's right. There's Questing Beast now for Paulo Vitor.
Paulo playing it post-combat to see if Stráský has a bounce effect.
Yeah, I think Stráský may have even found an Ether Gust here. No, maybe not. He let the Questing Beast go, so I think we're just going to see Once Upon a Time.
Is Paulo no longer has cards in hand, right?
No, he's done. I think he played out the last one, the Gilded Goose.
So
right?
given that he played out the last card in hand, Stráský has to be thrilled, because now he can just slam the mass manipulation and not have to worry about a counterspell.
Yeah, we could see Ondřej Stráský moving very closely to becoming the Mythic Championship winner here at Mythic Championship 6. He's going to take the 2 biggest threats, and when you mulligan to 5, this is the type of play that devastates you. All of a sudden, Ondřej Stráský is going to start attacking now for 8, and this could be over in a turn or 2 for Ondřej Stráský.
Paulo needs his own mass manipulation here to steal those creatures back. He has access to 8 mana. He has two geese with 6 lands in play. That's exactly the card that he needs to come back here.
Can he find it? He draws his card for the turn. He just took a quick look at it and set it down. We didn't get to see what it was. Paulo Vitor fighting for his tournament life once again here in game number 5. It looks like it's an Oko.
So he can play the Oko and turn one of those creatures into just an elk.
Can you imagine sitting in Ondřej Stráský's seat right now? He was staring down loss in the last game. He fought his way all the way back to win it, and now he's playing against somebody that when he first met him, he literally said, "You're my hero. Like, you're the person I watch on this very stream, and I want to be like you." And he's on the verge of beating him in the finals of a Mythic Championship.
I mean, again, this is literally what you
dreamed
about.
Ondřej Stráský wins Mythic Championship 6. Congratulations, Ondřej.
Oh my goodness, what a turnaround. I mean, I thought Paulo had it. I thought Paulo had it in game 4.
I did too. Unbelievable. He stuck right in there, never gave up, and found the right lines. Ondřej played so beautifully here in the finals and in the whole top 8. A well-earned victory for Mythic Championship VI winner, Ondřej Stráský.
Oh my goodness. Those mass manipulations.
Unreal.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really, when you compare that to, the casualties of war.
It's not even close.
It's not even close. Not even close at all. And I mean, can you imagine just that excitement that you feel, right?
Absolutely.
When your opponent shows that they're hellbent, they have no cards in hand,
yeah.
you're holding that mass manipulation. I mean,
By the way,
I would be shaking.
A couple of Pro Tour champions there standing with Ondřej as well. He keeps good company, and it looks like we've got a word with Ondřej Stráský and Tim Willoughby right now.
Thank you. Yes, I'm down here on the floor with our Mythic champion, Mr. Ondřej Stráský. And is there a scarier person to play against with 5 cards in hand in the entirety of Magic the Gathering than Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa? I don't think any of us were expecting to see a questing beast going to town there in that game 5.
Well, I definitely didn't expect that. I mean, Paulo is one of the greats of all time, I think. I think he's probably even better than Kai and Finkel. I mean, his stats are just incredible. So I couldn't pick a worse opponent, I guess, for the finals. And that game 4 was crazy. I thought I had no chance. I was already thinking about I'm gonna shake his hand, I'm gonna congratulate him. Then I came back and it's game 5. I had a really good draw. So
there were a couple of moments in those last couple of games where we got to see the trademark Stráský smile as you saw a mass manipulation at key moments. That mass manipulation off the top with the Castle Vantris, and then of course the decisive one in game 5. The key spell that's finally left you as the champion here in Richmond. Congratulations again, our champion here at Mythic Championship VI, Ondřej Stráský.
Well, that was quite exceptional. Eduardo, how are you getting on?
That was exceptional. If you were going to watch one game from this top 8, you just tuned in, you know it's a long day, rewatch game 4 of the finals. That to me was by far the game, I don't even know of the tournament, but certainly of the day, close to the one of the tournament. It was, people were calling it. They were like, you know what? We're about to congratulate PV. We're about to close the day. And I was like, wait a second. Still a shot. And he played it perfectly. Every sequence that Ondřej made in that game 4, one mistake and he would have lost the trophy. And instead, he came back. The key turn, Veil of Summer on mass manipulation, a card for Veil of Summer that not necessarily played in these mirrors, reversed the tempo, and Ondřej Stráský was able to win that game 4 and get to game 5 that otherwise wouldn't have existed and take down the tournament as a result.
And Brad Nelson famously always talks about, I'm going to play Magic until they tell me I'm not allowed to play Magic anymore. But never has that been more true, Maria, than at this tournament where every round people were going to time. The number of draws were huge. The number of 1-0s were huge. The amount of, as Eduardo said, the amount of sheer decision-making turn after turn after turn. This was not a game where games started on turn 3 and 4. Big choices were happening on turn 2.
Yeah, you've got to take into account this entire weekend when you're looking at this top 8 here. Our first day of tournament play was so long, 12 hours. The next day, also extremely long, as you said. And here in this top 8, we even heard from Toralf Severin, winner of Mythic Championship 4, and he said, I think my top 8 ended, about right now, and we've still got a finals to go.
I don't remember the last championship of this level where I've seen multiple people at the top of the standings with 3 draws.
I don't ever remember it.
Right.
Like multiple people finished on 33 points with 3 draws.
Yeah, Elliot
Unbelievable.
was up against Oscar Christensen playing for the top 8. Normally, players we see at Grand Prix all the time, if they've got 2 draws, that probably means they won 3, 2, and 2 on day 1 because they're really slow, they're reading lots of cards. That's where 2 draws comes from, but not at this tournament. It was relentless. Now look, Eduardo, put this in a historic perspective because we said up front we would be honest with you, the viewer, that we knew it was going to be a lot of Oko decks. 63% were full Oko decks, and there was another 5% that were still running 3 or 4 copies of Oko Thief of Crowns. We have not seen anything like it ever.
When you're going to look back at the end of this decade of 2019, this is the tournament. Whenever there was a 1-deck format, this was the 1-deck tournament. It was defined by Oko FIFA of Crowns from start to finish. It turned out the best way to actually win the mirror was the Sultai Sacrifice deck, which we did not see in the top 8, but by far had the best win rate, because when you know 2/3 of the field what they're playing and you're prepared for them, your win rate skyrocketed. It was like 70%, which that's more than Eldrazi, I believe, back in Oath of the Gatewatch. It's absolutely, it's almost like like playing that Sultai Sacrifice deck at this tournament would have been equivalent to playing Academy back at Pro Tour Rome. It is truly unprecedented.
Yeah.
I've never seen so many people playing out there in the tournament wearing elk horns. You know, I mean, obviously, I mean,
Yes.
but I mean, like cosplaying
Sure.
just in general. People playing in a Mythic Championship, cosplaying during their rounds.
But also, Eduardo, it's easy enough to say it was a one-deck format, but it was a format that rewarded excellence in a way that, in a sense, a lot of Mythic Championships don't, because of huge deck diversity. Charles Severin sat here and said he played against 10 Oko decks. Now, in a typical field, the number one deck might have 23% of the field, and in your 10 constructed rounds, when you've decided I brought something to beat the best deck, you might play it twice in 10 rounds. But here, these are people who play tested for weeks and knew exactly what they were going to do in every situation within that very narrow confine, and they got rewarded.
Right, part of that is you can prepare. You know what you're going to face, so you can focus all your energy there. And for me, in this scenario, it was really about the fact that Oko is a Planeswalker not with just free abilities, but 20 options. Imagine the scenario, the common scenario, you play it on turn 2, +2, pass. Next turn, you have 3 or 4 options. The turns after, it just multiplies. It's not additive, it's multiplicative. As the game progresses, a card like Oko FIFA of Crowns gains exponentially in options.
Mass manipulation, you think, is the card of the weekend? Is Ondřej going to get that framed?
Yeah, he will get that.
All right, my friends, well, down on the floor, the assembled throng are indeed assembled. So it's time to give away the trophy for Mythic Championship VI.
And Magic fans from around the world, welcome to the feature match area here for Mythic Championship VI. This is, of course, the best time of any Mythic Championship. This is when we get to honor our champion, Ondřej Stráský. Yeah, grab it. Wow, Ondřej, I just got to ask you first up, how do you get through those insane mirrors? It's so complicated.
Dude, I don't know. I really thought I was just dead. I was like thinking about, okay, what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say, good job, Paulo, you're the greatest. And then the game just started turning around. He played the Mass Manipulation, the Veil of Summer, like insane for me. And then the game 5, I got very lucky, you know. That's all you need.
Just a little bit of luck. What was it like for you to play against somebody who I know is one of your heroes, Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa?
Yeah, he's definitely, like, when I started playing Magic, Paulo was like the biggest idol for me, and now he's one of my best friends. I think he's an amazing player. He played incredible the whole tournament, I think better than me. But you know, this is Magic, it's a game of luck, it's a game of skill. We built the deck together with me and Paulo, we worked on a lot on it, and I think the deck was great, so I'm happy we could show it.
Yeah, you got to be happy with the way the deck performed, both of you meeting up in the finals there. What's going forward for you now, right? We're looking into kind of a brave new world, MPL, World Championship coming up next year. What does this mean for you going forward?
Yeah, I have one announcement to make. I would like to say that I'm officially unretired. And hopefully I'll make the MPL next year, and we'll see where we go from there.
It's great to have you back, Ondřej. Ondřej, congratulations once again, your champion, Ondřej Stráský. That's going to do it for us from the feature match area. We'll see you next time.
And so Mythic Championship VI comes to a close with that man, Ondřej Stráský, jumping for joy as after 5 incredible games against one of the greatest the game has ever seen, Paulo Vitor Damo da Rosa, he emerged victorious. He is your Mythic Championship VI winner. He will join the World Championship ranks at the start of 2020. Surrounded by friends, family, testing team, it really was about the gathering for him. Magic, of course, moves on. Who stays in the MPL? Who goes? Who joins the new Rivals League? Who will get the remaining seats at the World Championship? All that is for the future. But of course, as you can see there, Magic really is about the gathering. And that's true for us behind the scenes just as much as those of you watching from home. And for us, a dearly beloved friend and colleague is leaving us after 13 astonishing years behind the scenes. We'd like to say a very special thank you to our friend, Deb Slater. But you know, here at the Mythic Championship that was all about food, for Honey, the taste of victory was sweet.